A wealthy businessman misplaces a suitcase containing 100 grand. A modest woman arrives at his doorstep with an unexpected surprise. What unfolds next is truly unforgettable. Hi there. Thanks for tuning in. Don't forget to hit the like button and drop a comment with your thoughts and the city you're watching from. Now, let's dive into the story. Emily Carter's breath formed little clouds in the cold air of a nearly deserted subway platform in downtown Chicago. The harsh fluorescent lights above made the concrete pillars look even more stark and lifeless. At 2 a.m., trains were few and far between, and the faint hum of the next one gave her a moment to think. She held a small stack of overdue bills in one hand and her keys in the other. Her mind raced through tomorrow's to-do list at her cafe. Carter's Nook, trying to figure out how she'd cover the urgent repairs. Emily, 38, had warm hazel eyes that always seemed to carry a hint of worry. Her dark hair, tied back in a loose ponytail, looked lackluster under the bright lights. It had been 6 months since her divorce from James, a successful accountant who once promised her the world but left her with a pile of debt and heartache. Now, she was on her own, sharing a small one-bedroom apartment with her ailing mother, Margaret. Margaret had been diagnosed with Alzheimer's 2 years ago, and each passing month forced Emily into tougher decisions. Recently, she'd been debating whether to hire part-time in-home care or risk leaving Margaret alone. The train's rumble grew louder, but Emily's thoughts stayed fixed on her troubles. Carter's Nook had a leaky sink in the kitchen. The city inspector had issued a warning. Fix it soon or face fines. Between the cafe's slim profits, her mother's medical bills, and the rent, she felt stretched in every direction. When the train screeched to a halt, only 2 other passengers got off. Emily lingered at the far end of the platform. She glanced around, looking for a payphone or a trash can for her empty coffee cup. That's when she spotted a black suitcase tucked behind a metal bench. It looked oddly out of place, and in these cautious times, an unattended bag often spelled trouble. Her first thought was to alert security, but the platform attendant's booth was empty, and there was no one else around. For a moment, she wondered if it belonged to one of the passengers who had just left. Maybe they're in a hurry, she reasoned, but a nagging feeling in her chest urged her to check. Setting her bills and keys aside, Emily approached the suitcase, glancing over her shoulder as if expecting someone to shout, "Hey, that's mine!" But no one did. With each step, her heart beat faster. She wasn't looking for trouble. Her life had enough of that. But something compelled her to crouch down and inspect the case. It was made of thick black nylon, scuffed at the edges but still in decent shape. The zipper was slightly open at one corner. She thought she glimpsed a neat bundle of something inside. Her breath caught. It could be clothes or just random junk. The train behind her sounded its departing bell. She watched helplessly as the doors slid shut and it rolled away, leaving her alone on the platform with this mysterious bag. She took a deep breath, telling herself to stay calm. Then she pulled the zipper open another inch. Her eyes widened. Inside were stacks of $100 bills, held together with rubber bands. This can't be real, she thought, her breath nearly catching in her throat. Despite the chilly air, nervous sweat formed along her hairline. She hesitated, then reached in far enough to touch one bundle. It felt solid, real. For a moment, she stared at the money as if it were a live wire. Here she was, behind on bills, watching her mother's health decline, and struggling to keep her cafe afloat. $100,000, if her guess was correct, could wipe out every debt. But what if it was someone's emergency fund? What if it was dirty money or tied to something illegal? Her conscience battled her desperation. Margaret's face floated into her mind. Emily could almost hear her mother's voice from her healthier days, reminding her about honesty and doing the right thing, no matter the cost. "Those values define you," Margaret would say, placing a gentle hand on Emily's shoulder. The memory brought unexpected tears to her eyes. She carefully zipped the suitcase shut, her heart pounding. There was no immediate answer for what to do next, but leaving it there felt wrong. Pocketing the money felt even worse. With trembling hands, Emily spotted a half-torn luggage tag. Only a partial name remained, Daniel Harper. She tried to read the rest, but the ink was smudged beyond recognition. The overhead speaker crackled, announcing the next train would arrive in 10 minutes. Emily's legs felt shaky, but her decision was firm. "I'll take it," she whispered under her breath. "I'll find whoever this belongs to." Because if she didn't, the guilt would haunt her. And perhaps, just maybe, doing the right thing, however hard, would change her own fortune. As she gripped the suitcase, she felt the weight of its contents, both physical and moral. Suddenly, the platform lights flickered, intensifying the lonely atmosphere. Emily glanced at the sign, displaying the next train's arrival, and realized there was no turning back now. If the owner was truly out there, she would find him, and if the money represented a test of her character, she intended to pass. Late that night, Emily returned to her modest apartment on the outskirts of downtown, her heart still racing from the shock of what she had found. She locked the door behind her, the suitcase firmly in hand, and tiptoed around the sleeping form of her mother, Margaret, who had dozed off in an armchair by the television. The muted glow of a late-night talk show danced across Margaret's face, highlighting the soft creases around her eyes, lines etched by age, worry, and the slow fade of memory. Emily gently pressed the power button on the remote. Margaret stirred, her eyes fluttering open for a brief moment. "Oh, Emily, you're home," she mumbled, her voice distant with confusion. Then she sank back into sleep. Emily tucked a throw blanket around her mother and slipped into the narrow hallway that led to her own bedroom. Once inside, she carefully placed a black suitcase on the bed. The overhead bulb flickered to life with a dull hum. She felt like an intruder in her own space. She gazed at the bag as if it might explode at any moment. Then, with cautious resolve, she opened it again, half expecting the money to have vanished or turned out to be counterfeit. It was all still there, neat stacks of $100 bills. They weren't brand-new bills fresh from a bank. Some had minor folds and creases. Her eyes drifted to a bundle of envelopes nestled in the corner, tied together with a faded blue ribbon. Emily hadn't noticed them before in her rushed discovery. They looked worn, like personal letters handled many times over. Unsettled, she lifted the ribbon packet. The top envelope read, in elegant handwriting, "For Lily." The name brought a wave of emotion. There was no address on the front, just that single word. Her immediate thought was that these were personal messages, someone's cherished keepsakes. She felt a pang of guilt at the idea of prying further. But the existence of these letters made the suitcase even more of a mystery. She gently set the letters aside, though they seemed to emanate importance. A million questions buzzed in her head. Who is Lily? Why was this money left at a subway station? And who is Daniel Harper? The half-torn label attached to the suitcase was her only clue. Emily pulled out her phone and did a quick search for the name Daniel Harper, Chicago. Instantly, several hits appeared. Articles about a corporate mogul, features on charity galas, and references to Harper Enterprises. He was, apparently, a prominent figure in the city's business scene. With each click, a photograph of a tall, dark-haired man with a measured smile stared back at her. She felt a growing sense of unease. This was no anonymous traveler. If the money belonged to someone so powerful, how could they have misplaced it? Or was there something more sinister at play? Gently setting her phone aside, she tried to think logically. The right thing to do was to contact this Daniel Harper. Yet fear kept creeping in. Fear of being accused of stealing. Fear of getting caught in something illegal. Fear that her good intentions would bring her trouble. Slumping onto the bed, Emily rubbed her temples. Her divorce. Her struggling café. Her mother's relentless condition. Life had already thrown her enough curveballs. Should I really get involved in this? She wondered. Part of her, the part weighed down by overdue bills and mounting medical costs, whispered a different question. What if this money could solve everything? A lump formed in her throat. The voice of her mother echoed in her memory. Do what's right, no matter how hard. Emily's eyes stung with tears. She glanced at the bedroom door, imagining Margaret out there, dozing in the armchair. Even with advanced Alzheimer's, her mother sometimes had these miraculous moments of clarity where her advice felt as solid as ever. In one such moment, weeks ago, Margaret had reminded her, "We stand by our morals, sweetheart, or we stand for nothing." Those words echoed now. Determined, she rose and retrieved her laptop. She typed an email to Harper Enterprises' general inquiry address. Asterisk to whom it may concern. I believe I have found a suitcase belonging to Mr. Daniel Harper. It contains items that may be very important. Please let me know how I can return it. Asterisk, her finger hovered over the send button. Her stomach churned, and a dozen doubts flooded her mind, but she clicked it anyway. Exhaling shakily, Emily closed the suitcase and tucked it in her closet. There was no telling what would happen next. She half expected someone to bang on her door any second. Instead, the apartment remained quiet, except for her mother's soft breathing in the living room. She turned out the light and slipped under the covers, feeling the weight of the day settle in her bones. It was as if the universe had thrust a monumental secret into her hands. As she drifted off to a restless sleep, one thought kept circling back. Returning the money was the right thing to do, but those letters might matter far more than any cash. She silently vowed not to let fear or desperation compromise her integrity. Sunlight filtered through threadbare curtains the next morning, illuminating Emily's cramped bedroom. She woke up with a start, the events of the previous night rushing in like a tidal wave. Immediately, her eyes darted toward the closet, half expecting the suitcase to have vanished. Of course, it was still there. She felt a twist in her stomach, torn between moral resolve and practical desperation. After dressing quickly in jeans and a simple gray sweater, she found Margaret in the kitchen, staring blankly at a cabinet. "Mom, are you looking for something?" Emily asked softly. Margaret turned, confusion painting her features. I think I was looking for sugar," she said hesitantly, glancing around as though she wasn't sure where she was. Emily guided her mother to a seat. "I'll make you some tea," she offered, placing a reassuring hand on Margaret's shoulder. The lines on Margaret's face relaxed slightly. Moments like this, though common, still broke Emily's heart. There were fleeting mornings when Margaret seemed almost like her old self, but today was not one of those days. As the kettle boiled, Emily's phone buzzed. She quickly retrieved it, her heart rate spiking when she saw a short email. Asterisk, thank you for contacting Harper Enterprises. We will forward your message to Mr. Harper's personal assistant. Please keep the suitcase secure until further notice. Asterisk, no explanation, no personal note, just a polite acknowledgement. She wondered if Daniel Harper himself would ever respond. She spent the afternoon at Carter's Nook, going through the motions of running her small cafe. The usual morning crowd trickled in, office workers grabbing black coffee, an elderly couple sharing a blueberry muffin, a tired nurse from the clinic down the street. Emily exchanged polite smiles, but her mind was elsewhere. Every time she glanced at the old clock by the menu board, she was reminded that time was running out, not just for the cafe's finances, but for her mother's care. By noon, she had sold fewer pastries than expected. Her friend Anna, who helped out part-time at the counter, noticed Emily's distant expression. "Everything okay, boss?" Anna asked, leaning in with concern. Emily hesitated, then offered a half-truth. "Just a lot on my mind. Bills are stacking up." She couldn't bring herself to mention the suitcase. It felt too big, too complicated. Anna nodded sympathetically. "Well, I'm here if you need me." A lump formed in Emily's throat. She appreciated Anna's kindness, but was afraid of dragging anyone else into this. Around 2:00, when business died down, Emily used a lull to check her phone. Still no further emails or calls. She felt a pang of disappointment and frustration. Does Daniel Harper not care that I have a suitcase stuffed with his money? The real weight of temptation hit her as she counted the day's meager earnings in the cash register. In the past few weeks, she'd had to skip her own health insurance payments to keep her mother's coverage afloat. She thought about the thick stacks of $100 bills in her closet. It would solve so many problems. But at what cost? Trying to clear her head, she closed up early and headed home. Margaret was watching an old sitcom, her eyes brightening momentarily as Emily entered. "I used to love this show," Margaret said, as if she recalled something nostalgic. Then her face fell blank again. Emily gently sat beside her mother on the couch. "Mom, do you remember how you always taught me to do the right thing, even when it's hard?" she asked in a soft tone. Margaret blinked, a mild flicker of recognition. "Yes, dear. It was important to your father and me," she replied, her voice trailing off. Emily squeezed her mother's hand. I found something very valuable, and I'm trying to do the right thing with it. She didn't expect a coherent response, but Margaret's gaze held Emily's for a moment, and a tear slipped down the older woman's cheek. I'm sure you'll make the right choice, she whispered. That simple statement reaffirmed Emily's decision. She made her mother dinner. Scrambled eggs with toast, the only thing Margaret felt like eating. Afterward, she returned to her bedroom to check her email once more. No new messages. Anxiety gnawed at her. She pictured Daniel Harper in the sleek office, his time too precious to deal with a missing suitcase. Before going to bed, she stood in front of her closet. Her reflection in the mirrored door revealed worry lines carving themselves into her face. I won't give in, she murmured. The money promised instant relief, but that choice clashed with every principle she held dear. With a trembling sigh, she snapped the closet door shut. Guilt and temptation haunted her equally. She hoped that Mr. Harper, whoever he was, would come forward soon and claim not only the money, but also those mysterious letters. Because in her heart, Emily believed those letters held a value she could never replace, no matter how many bills she could pay. 2 days passed with no word from Harper Enterprises. Emily's anxiety began to spiral. Each morning, she scanned her inbox with a desperate hope of seeing a personal message from Daniel Harper himself. But all she found were promotional emails and final notices from utility companies. Her cafe was operating on borrowed time, and she was behind on her mother's medical expenses yet again. On a gray Wednesday afternoon, a health inspector strode through Carter's Nook unannounced. Tall and stoic, with a clipboard in hand, he examined every corner of the kitchen and cafe area. Emily's heart slammed against her ribs as she watched him scribble notes. After circling the small dining area, he leveled his gaze at her. Carter, he began, we've discussed the plumbing issues before. If repairs aren't completed by our next inspection, we'll have to close you down temporarily. Emily felt heat rising to her cheeks. I understand, she managed, trying to keep her voice steady. I'm doing my best to secure funds for the repairs. I just need... You have 2 weeks, he interjected firmly, handing her a form. After that, we have no choice. With a curt nod, he left. She sank onto one of the worn wooden chairs, reading the official notice through a film of tears. Anna, who had been organizing the pastry display, approached and rested a comforting hand on Emily's shoulder. It'll be okay, Anna said softly, but Emily wondered if it really would. That evening, she found Margaret in a state of agitation, pacing the living room. Where's my classroom? I need to get back to my students, Margaret said, eyes darting around as if lost in the school hallway. Emily's chest constricted. Her mother had been a teacher for over 3 decades. In these moments of confusion, Margaret often reverted to that role, searching for chalkboards and desks that existed only in her memory. It's late, Mom, Emily said gently, guiding her to the couch. You're home now. Let's sit and rest. Margaret's eyes brimmed with tears. Did they fire me? Am I too old? She asked, panic in her voice. Emily swallowed hard. No, nothing like that, Mom. You retired a while ago. Everything is fine, okay? She hated lying, but telling the truth that Margaret's mind had betrayed her was far too cruel. Margaret eventually settled into a restless sleep. Emily covered her with a soft blanket, her thoughts circling back to the suitcase. If she used a fraction of that money, the cafe could stay afloat and Margaret's care would be assured. But every time that idea crossed her mind, she felt her conscience recoil. Unable to sleep, she brewed a cup of chamomile tea and checked her email once more. Finally, a new message appeared. Asterisk, dear Ms. Carter, my name is Laura Bennett, and I serve as Mr. Harper's personal assistant. He would be most grateful to speak with you in person about the suitcase you mentioned. Kindly visit Harper Enterprises at your earliest convenience. Asterisk relief and dread surged in equal measure. She sipped her tea, rereading the email. So, he finally reached out. The next morning, she arranged for Anna to cover the cafe and for a neighbor to watch Margaret for a few hours. Then, clutching the black suitcase, she hopped on a bus headed to the upscale business district. The ride felt surreal. Skyscrapers looming overhead seemed to belong to another universe, one in which people wore designer suits, conducted multi-million-dollar deals, and had personal drivers waiting outside marble lobbies. Emily could practically feel the weight of her second-hand denim jacket and the scuff marks on her boots. By the time she arrived at a glittering glass tower labeled Harper Enterprises, her nerves were shot. Inside, the lobby boasted a sleek, modern design, polished floors, minimalist art, and a long reception desk manned by uniformed staff. Emily approached a stern-looking receptionist and explained she had an appointment with Laura Bennett. Moments later, she was escorted through a security checkpoint, then guided into a quieter corridor where Laura greeted her. The assistant was in her early 50s, her poised demeanor softened by kind hazel eyes. "Ms. Carter," she said, offering a polite smile, "I'm so glad you could come. Please follow me." They took a private elevator to one of the top floors. Emily's stomach churned as she clutched the suitcase. The doors opened into a lavish reception area with floor-to-ceiling windows showcasing Chicago's skyline. The city stretched out in infinite detail below, a reminder how small her own world had become lately. Laura led her down a corridor, stopping at a large wooden door. "Mr. Harper's inside," she said, pausing to look Emily in the eye. "He's been anxious to recover what you found." Emily nodded, unable to muster a verbal reply. She stepped into the office. It was spacious, flooded with natural light, and dominated by an imposing mahogany desk. There, Daniel Harper stood by the window, hands clasped behind his back. Tall and broad-shouldered, with a polished aura, he turned to greet her. Yet the moment his gaze landed on the suitcase in Emily's hand, a wave of vulnerability passed over his otherwise confident features. In that charged silence, Emily felt a mix of relief and trepidation. She was about to discover why this money, and perhaps something else in that bag, mattered so profoundly to this powerful man. It was a meeting she could never have anticipated, one that could change both their lives in ways neither fully understood. Daniel Harper closed the distance between them with measured steps. He wore an impeccably tailored charcoal suit, but there was a weariness in his eyes that belied his poised appearance. Extending his hand, he offered a firm but polite handshake. "Miss Carter, thank you for coming," he said quietly. Emily swallowed, her nerves taut. I wasn't sure what else to do with this," she admitted, lifting the black suitcase slightly. "I just knew it didn't belong to me." Laura hovered in the background, ready to assist, but clearly intent on giving them privacy. Daniel gestured toward a seating area with a low table and comfortable chairs. "Let's sit," he said, settling into one of the seats. Emily followed suit, carefully placing the suitcase on the table. The hush that settled felt almost reverent. Laura stepped out, closing the door gently behind her. Daniel reached for the bag zipper, and Emily stiffened, even though she knew the money was his. Watching him open the suitcase triggered her own swirl of emotions. He pulled out the neatly packed stacks of cash, sighing with relief. But what caught his full attention was a bundle of letters tied with a worn blue ribbon. Emily watched him lift the envelopes, as though they were made of the most delicate glass. His gaze flickered with raw pain. She shifted awkwardly, uncertain if she should speak. At last, he drew in a shaky breath. "You have no idea how much these letters mean," he murmured. "They're from my late wife, Claire." Something constricted in Emily's chest. She could see the emotion etched in his face. I didn't read them," she said quietly. "I only saw they were for someone named Lily." Daniel nodded, setting the letters down carefully on his lap. "Lily is my 6-year-old daughter. These were written by Claire in the months before his voice faltered, before she passed away." Emily's eyes grew misty. She understood loss, maybe not on a scale, but she empathized with the heaviness that comes with watching someone you love slip away. "I'm really sorry," she offered gently. "I hope returning these brings some comfort." Daniel nodded, his voice tight. "Comfort, yes, more than you can know." He turned to the stacks of cash still in the suitcase. "I appreciate your honesty in bringing all of this back. Most people would have kept the money." Emily finished quietly, unable to hide the trembling in her voice. "I'll admit, the thought crossed my mind. It's a lot." She gave a sad laugh, remembering every time she eyed that small fortune with desperation. But my mother raised me to do the right thing. He regarded her thoughtfully. Your mother sounds like a remarkable woman. She is, Emily replied, a hint of a smile emerging. Then reality reasserted itself. Mr. Harper, how did this suitcase end up on a subway platform? I was worried it might be something illegal. Daniel's expression shuddered for a moment, a trace of embarrassment surfacing. I honestly don't know how it ended up there. I had it in my car earlier this week. I was juggling so many responsibilities, my business, Lily's needs. I might have placed it down, got distracted, then forgot to lock the trunk. It's possible someone tried to steal it, got spooked, and abandoned it. I wish I had a better explanation. His eyes flicked to the letters again. I've been carrying them around for weeks. Maybe I thought having them close would somehow keep Claire's memory alive. Emily nodded, absorbing this. Well, I'm just glad I found it. The money? I'm sure it's important, but the letters seemed far more personal. Daniel clenched his jaw, a mixture of gratitude and regret washing over him. I can never repay you for returning Claire's letters, especially with everything you might be going through. He paused, seemingly hesitant. Is there anything I can do for you, Miss Carter? Anything at all? She hesitated. An image of her struggling Café, overdue bills, and her mother's medical care flashed in her mind. But she shook her head, not wanting to appear mercenary. I just wanted to return what wasn't mine, she said softly, though her voice quavered with the weight of unspoken needs. He reached into the inside pocket of his suit, produced a business card, and handed it to her. If you change your mind about anything, please call me. I'd like to at least thank you properly, maybe discuss a way I can help. He locked eyes with her, sincerity evident in his tone. You've given me a gift I can't put a price on. I'd like to repay you in some way. Emily took the card, her mind spinning. She felt relief that she'd finally done the right thing, but a gnawing uncertainty remained. Thank you, Mr. Harper, she managed, rising to her feet. I appreciate it. He rose as well, the letter still clutched in his hands. Their eyes met, and for a moment there was an unspoken acknowledgement that fate had somehow crossed their paths. Please call me Daniel, he said quietly, following her to the door. I have a feeling we'll speak again. As Laura re-entered to escort her out, Emily felt the weight of the last few days lifting off her shoulders. Yet, walking to the polished corridors of Harper Enterprises, she couldn't shake the sensation that their meeting was only the beginning of something far more complicated and potentially life-changing than she ever dared imagine. Emily stepped out onto the Chicago sidewalk, still feeling the echo of her encounter with Daniel Harper in the corridors of Harper Enterprises. The morning wind whipped strands of her hair around her face as she clutched the business card he'd given her. She kept replaying his words. Call me if there's anything I can do. Part of her longed to accept his help. The other part insisted on independence. Later that evening, back at her modest apartment, she found Margaret sitting quietly with a half-finished cup of tea. The television was on but muted, the soft glow dancing across her mother's tired features. Margaret glanced at Emily with a curious spark. How did it go? She asked, as if she'd been more aware of Emily's day than usual. Emily offered a gentle smile. It was interesting. I met Mr. Harper. He was very grateful. She hesitated, unsure how much her mother could retain. He offered to help me. Margaret's brows knitted together in a moment of clarity. Help you? How? That's the question, Emily answered, sinking onto the couch. He seems genuine, but I don't want to take advantage. Margaret reached for Emily's hand. There's a difference between taking advantage and accepting kindness. Remember that, dear? The next morning, a gust of cold air hit Emily as she pushed open the door to Carter's nook. Anna was already there, tying an apron around her waist. Business had been painfully slow, and the looming deadline for plumbing repairs left Emily anxious. She fired up the coffee machine, mentally calculating the cost for a new sink installation versus patchwork repairs. At midday, she was in the middle of steaming milk for a latte when her phone vibrated. Balancing the phone between her ear and shoulder, she heard a crisp, familiar voice on the other end. Miss Carter, This is Laura Bennett, Mr. Harper's assistant." Emily stepped away from the loud hiss of the espresso machine. "Yes, hi, Laura. Is everything all right?" "Everything is fine," Laura replied courteously. "Mr. Harper would like to invite you to dinner at his residence next Thursday evening, if you're available. He also asked me to mention that his daughter, Lily, will be there. He's hoping to properly thank you." Emily's heart fluttered. Dinner at his residence. The idea felt like stepping into a completely different world, one she wasn't sure she belonged in. But the invitation also seemed like an opportunity, maybe to discuss her business, or at least see what Daniel meant by offering help. She agreed, feeling both excitement and apprehension. When she hung up, Anna raised an eyebrow. "Big plans?" Emily exhaled. "Looks like I'm having dinner with Daniel Harper and his daughter. Guess he wants to say thanks." Anna's eyes lit up in amusement. "Dinner with a billionaire? Sounds like a fairy tale." Shaking her head, Emily tried to stifle a laugh. "Trust me, my life is anything but." The days leading up to Thursday were a blur of balancing the cafe's demands, Margaret's care, and a swirl of internal doubts about what this dinner might entail. Margaret had more moments of confusion, at one point not recognizing her own living room. It weighed heavily on Emily, reminding her that she couldn't afford to be reckless about finances or her time. When Thursday finally arrived, Emily closed the cafe early. She had borrowed a simple navy dress from Anna, a bit more polished than her usual jeans and sweater. Standing in front of her mirror, she smoothed the creases, wishing she felt more confident. A car from Harper Enterprises pulled up to her apartment building just after 6. The driver, an older gentleman named Robert, greeted her with a polite tip of his cap. She settled into the leatherback seat, heart pounding the entire ride. They arrived at a grand gated estate on the outskirts of the city. The house, more like a mansion, stood behind a carefully manicured lawn and a circular driveway. Lights glowed from within, illuminating tall windows and elegant columns. Emily swallowed her nerves, following Robert's direction to the front door. Laura opened it with a warm smile. "Ms. Carter, welcome. Please come in." She led Emily through a spacious foyer where polished marble floors gleamed under a chandelier. "Mr. Harper is just finishing up a call in his study." An anxious flutter settled in Emily's chest as she took in the opulent surroundings. Framed photos lined a nearby table. One showed Daniel smiling alongside a beautiful woman with gentle eyes. Another captured a bright-eyed little girl. Emily realized the woman must be Claire, his late wife. "Miss Emily," a small voice piped up. Emily turned to see Lily, wearing pink pajamas adorned with cartoon horses. The girl held a plush toy in one arm and stood half hidden behind a doorframe. Emily knelt. "Hi, Lily. It's nice to meet you." Lily regarded her with a solemn gaze before stepping closer. "Dad said you found something important. Mommy's letters." Emily felt a tug at her heart. "I did, and I'm really glad I could bring them back." The girl's eyes flickered with a blend of curiosity and sadness. Then she nodded shyly, retreating further behind the door. Emily realized in that brief moment how fragile Lily's world must feel. Laura guided Emily into a warm, inviting sitting room. A fireplace crackled softly, and a table was set with what looked like a simple meal. Emily took a seat on a plush sofa, the realization sinking in. This was no mere formality. She was stepping, perhaps unknowingly, into Daniel and Lily's private realm, a place shaped by loss, love, and hope. Somewhere upstairs, footsteps signaled Daniel's approach. Emily quickly straightened, heart pounding again. She was about to discover what exactly he had in mind when he said he wanted to thank her. Little did she know that this dinner would mark the beginning of a journey, one that would challenge her deepest fears and guide her toward unexpected alliances. Daniel Harper descended the sweeping staircase, dressed more casually than Emily expected. Dark trousers and a sweater, a stark contrast to his usual business suits. His expression was warm yet reserved as he greeted her. "Emily, I'm glad you could make it," he said, motioning toward the sitting room. "How was the drive?" She offered a small smile. "Very comfortable, thank you, and thank you for sending Robert." Daniel nodded. "I wanted to make sure you felt welcome." Then he caught sight of Lily peeking from behind a doorway. He gestured for her to to join them. Come on, sweetheart, it's okay. The little girl shuffled over, still clutching her stuffed animal. Her eyes flicked from Emily to her father. Can we eat in the kitchen, Dad? She asked softly. Daniel looked at Emily, an apologetic curve to his lips. We usually have casual dinners together at the kitchen table. Helps Lily feel more home. The idea actually comforted Emily. That sounds perfect, she said, following them through a hall that led into a spacious, state-of-the-art kitchen. Despite the marble countertops and stainless steel appliances, the space felt cozier than the formal sitting room. A small table by the window had been set for 3, complete with colorful placemats and a pitcher of lemonade. Lily climbed into a chair, her stuffed animal placed protectively on her lap. Daniel pulled out a seat for Emily, then sat across from her. Dinner was simple: roast chicken, mashed potatoes, and steamed vegetables. The normalcy of it put Emily at ease. They started with small talk. Lily spoke little, occasionally whispering a question to her father, who would then politely include Emily in the conversation. Every now and then, Emily noticed Lily studying her, as if evaluating whether the stranger could be trusted. Midway through the meal, Laura entered briefly to offer dessert options: apple pie or chocolate pudding. Lily instantly chose the pudding. Emily laughed softly, the tension in the air diffusing. Daniel glanced between them, relieved to see Lily more relaxed. When dessert came, Lily took her pudding to the living room to eat while watching a short cartoon. That left Emily and Daniel alone in the kitchen. She sipped from her glass of water, gathering courage to ask the question nagging her mind. Mr. Harper, Daniel, about your offer to help me. He leaned forward, elbows on the table. You've probably guessed I have some resources at my disposal, he said, keeping his voice measured. I don't want to overstep, but if there's anything at all, I could do to lighten your burden. I hope you'll let me. Emily inhaled shakily. Her instincts told her to remain cautious, but Margaret's fading health and the cafe's troubles weighed heavily on her conscience. Why not at least tell him the truth? She thought. I own a small cafe, Carter's Nook downtown, she began. It's been struggling lately, especially with the city's inspection deadlines. And my mother, Margaret, has Alzheimer's. I worry about her care and my ability to cover bills. Daniel's gaze softened. I'm sorry to hear that. I know the toll caring for someone ill can take. With Lily, after Claire passed, it felt impossible to balance everything. I can't imagine how hard it is doing that alone. Her voice trembled a bit. I'm trying to hold it all together, but I feel like I'm drowning in debt. I'm not asking for a handout, she hastened to add, cheeks warming. Part of me wonders if I should sell the cafe and focus on caring for my mom full time. He studied her for a moment. Would you still want to sell if your mother were healthy? If money wasn't an issue? Emily paused, blinking back tears. No, she admitted softly. That cafe was my dream after everything fell apart. I wanted to make something of my own. It was a second chance, but it's becoming more of a financial trap. Daniel reached across the table, resting his hand near hers. He didn't touch her, but the proximity was comforting. I get it. You want independence and dignity, but you also don't want to lose what you've built. He glanced over his shoulder, where Lily's cartoon murmured softly in the other room. I understand the need for a lifeline. When I lost my wife, I wish someone would offer me a way out of my own turmoil. She found herself nodding, relieved that he didn't judge her for struggling. I just can't see a path forward. He drew in a breath. I could provide a loan, or invest in the cafe. We could figure out terms that let you keep control, but give you the resources to fix what needs fixing. And for your mother, if she ever needs more advanced care, I know people, excellent in-home care services. Emily stared at him, torn between gratitude and weariness. Was it too good to be true? Could she trust him? Then she remembered the sincerity in his eyes when he retrieved his wife's letters from the suitcase. He's not an opportunist, she told herself. He's a father trying to do the right thing, just like I tried to do. You do that for someone you barely know? She asked. He gave a half smile. You return a small fortune, and more importantly, the last letters from my wife to our daughter. You gave me back something I thought I'd lost forever. If that doesn't prove your character, I don't know what does. Emily swallowed a mix of hope and uncertainty. "Let me think about it," she said. "I really appreciate the offer." Daniel nodded, respect evident in his gaze. "Take all the time you need." It was a big decision. Yet as Lily's laughter drifted from the living room, Emily felt a sense of calm. This might be her chance not only to save her cafe, but to open a new chapter in her life. Whether she was ready or not, she was stepping beyond the world she'd always known. For the next week, Emily found herself caught in a whirlwind of conflicting emotions. Accepting help from Daniel Harper, wealthy executive, devoted father, and virtual stranger, felt both promising and perilous. But each time she considered refusing, she remembered the threat of the cafe's looming closure and Margaret's upcoming doctor appointments. The clock was ticking louder than ever. One morning, she decided to pay a visit to Harper Enterprises, not for a formal meeting, but just to get a sense of the environment. If she was seriously considering a partnership, it wouldn't hurt to understand how Daniel's world worked. She left Carter's, Nook and Anna's capable hands and arrived at the towering glass building around midday. Busy professionals streamed in and out, dressed in sharp suits and carrying sleek briefcases. Emily, in her casual sweater and comfortable flats, felt underdressed and a bit intimidated. At the reception desk, a young man with friendly smile greeted her. "Good afternoon. Do you have an appointment?" She cleared her throat. "Not exactly. I was hoping to speak with Laura Bennett or Daniel Harper, if either is available. My name is Emily Carter." He tapped a few keys. "Let me check with Ms. Bennett. One moment, please." Within minutes, Laura Bennett appeared, projecting both efficiency and kindness. "Emily," she said, extending her hand. "What a pleasant surprise. Is everything all right?" Emily managed a small laugh. "I'm fine. I just wanted to see if we could talk about that offer Daniel mentioned." Laura's expression brightened. "Of course. Let's head upstairs." The elevator ride to the top floors of Harper Enterprises was smooth, yet felt longer than it was. Laura led Emily into a sleek corner office, a smaller one than Daniel's, but well-appointed and comfortable. Large windows overlooked the bustling city below. "Daniel's in a conference call, but I'm sure he'll be free soon," Laura explained, inviting Emily to sit in a plush chair by a modern glass coffee table. As Emily waited, her gaze drifted over the neatly arranged files on Laura's desk. A wave of curiosity washed over her. "Laura, how long have you worked for Mr. Harper?" The assistant settled opposite her. "Nearly 10 years now. I started when Lily was just a baby." She smiled wistfully, recalling old memories. Back then, Daniel's wife, Claire, was still alive. The company was smaller, but growing quickly. She was always so kind, would come by the office with Lily, just a newborn then. Emily exhaled softly. It must have been hard for him, losing her. Laura nodded solemnly. "Very. She passed unexpectedly, and he was left running the company and raising Lily. I did what I could to help, but no one could replace Claire." There was a moment of quiet understanding. Laura's words explained the lingering sadness Emily had sensed in Daniel's eyes. "He must be grateful for your support," Emily ventured. "He is," Laura agreed, "but in many ways, Daniel's still learning to balance everything, especially Lily's emotional needs. Having you return those letters, it meant the world to him." Before Emily could respond, the door opened and Daniel stepped in, looking slightly surprised but pleased. "Emily," he greeted, "I didn't realize you were here." She stood awkwardly. "I hope it's not a bad time. I wanted to ask some questions about the investment you proposed." He waved off the concern. "Not a bad time at all. Laura, would you mind giving us a few minutes?" Laura departed, and Daniel folded his arms, leaning against the edge of a modern desk. "So you're considering it?" Emily swallowed. "Yes, but I have no clue how to approach a formal partnership. I've never done anything like this." He nodded thoughtfully. "We can keep it simple. A small investment in your cafe under fair terms. You'd retain control, but we'd have an agreement, so there's a clear plan for repayment or profit sharing over time." A swirl of relief and worry blended in her chest. "I like the idea. But how does that fit with your priorities? You run a huge enterprise. Why invest in my little corner cafe?" Daniel's gaze softened. Because it matters to you and you matter to me. You help me more than you'll ever know. He spoke with quiet conviction. I see potential in you and in that cafe. I'd be remiss not to invest in something that could genuinely succeed. Her cheeks warmed. She glanced at the cityscape outside, then back at him. All right, let's figure out the details. A smile touched his lips. Great, my legal advisor, Mark Sullivan, can draft the paperwork. He's straightforward and discreet. I'd suggest we meet with him soon. Maybe tomorrow, if your schedule allows. Emily nodded, her heart pounding with a mixture of relief and excitement. Tomorrow works, she agreed. Daniel guided her to the hallway, where Laura was waiting to escort her back down. As Emily stepped into the elevator, she couldn't shake the sense that she was crossing into a new world full of people and possibilities she'd never considered. The ride down was silent, but her mind buzzed with questions. Was this the path to saving her cafe and giving Margaret the care she deserved? She had left her comfort zone behind the moment she returned that suitcase. Now, she was mingling with strangers who might become friends, or something more, before the journey was over. When she walked out onto the bustling street again, the crisp air hit her like a wake-up call. She realized that by accepting Daniel's offer, she was officially stepping into territory beyond her familiar struggles and small neighborhood. But if she was going to save her mother, her dreams, and her sense of self-worth, it was a leap she was willing to take. Emily arrived at Harper Enterprises the next day, feeling a hint of optimism. She had spent the morning at the cafe explaining to Anna that if all went well, they might have the funds to handle the plumbing issues and even freshen up the interior. Anna beamed, her relief tangible. Mark Sullivan, Daniel's legal advisor, was a man in his mid-40s with a relaxed demeanor and quick smile. He welcomed Emily into a smaller conference room with a pitcher of water and neatly stacked documents. Nice to meet you, Miss Carter, he said, shaking her hand. I've been briefed on the basics of your cafe. I'm here to help formalize your arrangement with Mr. Harper. Daniel sat at the far end of the table, sipping coffee and offering Emily an encouraging nod. He seemed patient, letting Mark lead the conversation. Emily settled into a chair, her nerves fluttering. I've never done a formal agreement like this, she admitted. Mark offered a reassuring grin. That's all right. We'll keep it straightforward. Essentially, Mr. Harper invests a certain amount in your cafe for immediate repairs and operational costs. You remain a majority owner, and, over time, you pay back his investment plus a fair return. If the cafe succeeds, as we believe it will, both sides benefit. He slid a draft document toward Emily. She skimmed the language, trying to piece together its meaning. It looks fair, she managed, though legal jargon made her head spin. But I want to make sure I'm not signing away my entire future. Daniel leaned forward. You're not. This arrangement is designed to protect your autonomy. Think of me as a silent partner who provides capital and occasional guidance. You run the cafe your way. She breathed a little easier, but another question burned. What if something happens to my mother? If I need to step away? Daniel's expression softened. Life happens, Emily. We'll include provisions for that. If you have to care for your mother full-time, the cafe can continue to operate with your staff. Or we can discuss pausing the repayment schedule until you're back on your feet. Emily swallowed back unexpected tears. She had expected a tougher business stance, but Daniel was offering compassion. Thank you, she whispered. Mark made some notes. I'll update the contract with those provisions. Once we're all comfortable, we can sign. They spent the next hour discussing practical details, timelines, potential budgets, and a plan to address the city inspector's demands. Emily found it surreal to be discussing her small cafe with a high-powered legal advisor and a corporate mogul. Yet neither Daniel nor Mark made her feel less than deserving. When they wrapped up, Mark excused himself to finalize the paperwork. Emily and Daniel lingered at the table, an unspoken tension in the air. It wasn't the nerve-wracking tension of conflict, but rather the flutter of possibility. Thank you, Emily said quietly, gazing at the scattered papers. I never thought I'd be here. Daniel smiled, his dark eyes warm. You've given me more than you realize. I'm just returning the favor. She felt her pulse quicken. Before she could respond, Laura appeared in the doorway. "Daniel, you have a board meeting in 15 minutes, she said, looking mildly apologetic. He nodded, turning back to Emily. "I'd love to continue this conversation, maybe over dinner again. Lily's been asking about you." Emily's cheeks grew warm. "I'd like that." They parted ways in the hallway, with Emily heading back to the elevator. As the door slid closed, she realized just how different her life had become in such a short span. Only weeks ago, she was scraping by, plagued by doubt. Now she was forging a partnership with a man whose kindness and sorrow she understood all too well. Yet the heavier tests were still to come. Her mother's condition hadn't improved. Margaret's doctor wanted to run more tests soon, hinting at a potential decline in cognitive function. And Emily couldn't ignore the possibility that Daniel's corporate world might not warmly embrace a small-town cafe owner stepping into its realm. For now, though, she chose to savor a moment of cautious optimism. The papers were almost signed. Her cafe was on the verge of a vital lifeline. And for the first time in ages, she felt a glimmer of hope that maybe, just maybe, she could build something beautiful from the wreckage of her past. When she returned home, Margaret was napping in her armchair. Emily knelt beside her mother, adjusting the blanket over her shoulders. "Mom," she whispered, brushing stray hair from Margaret's forehead. "Things might be okay. I think we're finally going to be okay." She kissed her mother's cheek, then let her rest. In her heart, she prayed that this fragile new beginning wouldn't slip away. Her mind spun with plans for the cafe, possible improvements, even new menu ideas to lure back customers. If all went well, she could repay Daniel, keep her dream alive, and provide for Margaret. But a small voice reminded her that good fortune sometimes invites envy or doubt from others. The real world rarely paves an easy path, especially when money, family, and fragile hearts are at stake. The next week was a whirlwind of activity. Emily officially signed the agreement with Daniel, allowing an immediate injection of funds into Carter's Nook. True to his word, he acted as a silent partner, letting her run day-to-day operations while Anna remained her right-hand confidant. Within days, plumbers arrived to fix the neglected pipes. The cafe finally passed inspection, much to Emily's relief. She also planned a modest reopening event, complete with fresh paint and a few new menu items. On the day the inspector approved their renovations, Emily wiped tears of joy from her cheeks, hugging Anna in the middle of the cafe. "I can't believe this is happening," she murmured, heart pounding with excitement. "I actually feel hopeful again." Anna beamed. "You deserve it. You've worked so hard." Word got around the neighborhood that Carter's Nook was back on its feet. Emily saw old customers returning, along with some new faces, attracted by the buzz of a revamped local business. One afternoon, a tall man in a suit approached the counter. He ordered a latte, then extended a hand. "James Whitmore," he introduced himself. "I'm a business associate of Daniel Harper's. Thought I'd check out this cafe he's been talking about." Emily felt a slight chill, despite his friendly smile. There was something in his gaze that felt scrutinizing. She forced a polite tone. "Welcome, Mr. Whitmore. I'm Emily, the owner. Hope you enjoy the coffee." He gave a curt nod. "I'm sure I will." She tried to brush off her unease and continued serving other customers. But from the corner of her eye, she noticed James surveying the cafe, almost as if he were evaluating a competitor or searching for weaknesses. When he left, he offered a distant wave. That evening, after closing, she received a text from Daniel. "Asterisk congratulations on passing the inspection. Lily and I would love to see you this weekend if you're free. Thinking of a casual lunch at our place. Lily wants to show you her new drawings." Asterisk Emily's heart skipped a beat. She responded with an enthusiastic yes. On Saturday morning, she found herself once again outside the Harper estate. This time, she wore a bright floral blouse and comfortable black pants. She carried a small box of pastries from her cafe, hoping Lily might enjoy them. Daniel and Lily greeted her at the door. Lily's face lit up the moment she spotted Emily. "I drew pictures of you," the little girl announced, grabbing Emily's hand and pulling her inside. Emily laughed, taken aback by the child's sudden burst of enthusiasm. They headed into the living room, where Lily had laid out crayons and paper. Sketches covered the table. Some of a woman with brown hair serving coffee, others of a tall man, Daniel, presumably, and even one that showed what appeared to be a child holding a letter with a big heart on it. "That's me with Mommy's letters," Lily explained solemnly. "Dad said you found them." Emily knelt by the drawings, struggling to keep her voice steady. "They were very special letters," she managed, her eyes flicking to Daniel. He stood nearby, hands in his pockets, watching them with a mixture of pride and sadness. "She won't talk about Claire much," Daniel murmured after Lily scurried off to find more crayons. "But drawing helps her." Emily nodded, understanding the power of small steps in healing. Sometimes the best way to deal with loss is finding a safe way to express it. He cast a thoughtful glance her way. "I think you've helped Lily more than you realize." He wouldn't let anyone near those letters before. A warmth spread through Emily's chest. "I'm happy I could help." They moved into the kitchen where a simple lunch was laid out, sandwiches, a fresh salad, and the pastries Emily had brought. Lily joined them at the table, chattering about her drawings and occasionally reaching for one of Daniel's hands, as if to assure herself he was still there. Halfway through the meal, Laura popped in with paperwork for Daniel. "Sorry to interrupt," she said, setting a folder on the counter. "Just something that needs your signature." Daniel apologized to Emily and flipped through the documents, his expression shifting from calm to concern. He sighed and handed the folder back. "It's the new land acquisition. We're running into pushback from some shareholders." Emily recalled the man who had come to her cafe, James Whitmore. A nagging feeling told her he might be behind that pushback. She decided not to press Daniel for details in front of Lily, though. Once Laura slipped out, Lily took Emily's hand. "Can we draw together?" the child asked softly. Emily smiled, glancing at Daniel for approval. He nodded, clearly grateful for any chance to see Lily's spirits lifted. As they settled back at the table with crayons in hand, Emily felt a quiet sense of belonging. The sincerity in Lily's eyes, Daniel's earnest gratitude, and even Laura's supportive presence made her realize that their paths were becoming intertwined. The unexpected partnership to save her cafe was only part of the story. A deeper connection was forming, a connection that might test all of them in ways they hadn't yet imagined. Early the following week, Emily was busy restocking shelves at Carter's Nook when the door jingled, announcing a visitor. She glanced up, expecting a customer, only to see James Whitmore again. Dressed in a tailored suit, he wore a polite smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Mr. Whitmore," she greeted, adjusting her apron. "Welcome back." He ambled toward the counter, glancing around the cafe as if making mental notes. "It seems business is picking up," he remarked. "Lots of chatter about how this place got an infusion of funds from Harper Enterprises." Emily's hand stiffened around a canister of coffee beans. "We had some outside investment, yes," she said carefully. "It allowed us to fix the plumbing." James chuckled. "I'm sure. Daniel has a generous heart." He leaned in, lowering his voice. "But just because he's invested doesn't mean others in the company share his enthusiasm." A chill threaded through Emily's spine. "I'm not looking for trouble, Mr. Whitmore." James raised his eyebrows. "No one goes looking for it, Miss Carter. But trouble sometimes finds those who stand in the way. Harper Enterprises has big plans, and Daniel tends to make choices with his heart. That can be problematic for certain expansions." She tried to steady her voice. "I'm not sure I understand." He shrugged, feigning casualness. "Let's just say, not everyone believes Daniel's personal interests should influence business decisions. Some might question your motives or his judgment." Frustration flared inside her. "I'm not manipulating Daniel, if that's what you're implying." James studied her, unblinking. "I suppose time will tell. You seem like a nice woman, Miss Carter, but you're out of your depth. Be mindful of that." He walked out, leaving the cafe door swinging in his wake. Emily stood there, heart pounding, anger and worry tangling in her chest. Was he threatening me, she wondered, or just warning me? That afternoon, she tried to focus on customers, but her mind kept drifting back to James's words. The next time Daniel texted to ask how the cafe was doing, she responded tersely, "We need to talk." He appeared at closing time, slipping into the front door, just as Emily was wiping down tables. She locked the door and flipped the sign closed. "Thanks for coming," she said, her voice edged with tension. Daniel looked around the empty cafe, noticing her anxious expression. "Everything all right?" Emily set the rag on the counter. James Whitmore was here again. He made it sound like people at Harper Enterprises resent me, or resent you for helping me. His jaw tightened. James can be a difficult man. He's been with the company a long time, but he's very set in his ways. He's never liked me mixing personal and professional matters. Emily felt a swirl of hurt and confusion. Am I just a personal matter? I'm worried he's going to sabotage your business or the cafe. Daniel shook his head. He can't sabotage it directly, but his influence with some board members who might question my choices. I won't lie. This could create friction. She exhaled, leaning against the counter. Maybe I should step back. Let you focus on your corporate ventures. I don't want to be a liability. His eyes flashed with conviction. You're not a liability. You're someone who did the right thing. If James and others can't see that, it's their problem, not yours. Emily swallowed hard, the emotions of the day crashing over her. I just hate being a source of conflict. Daniel moved closer, placing a reassuring hand on her arm. Trust me, you're not. This isn't about you. It's about James, fearing any move I make that isn't strictly profit-driven. She nodded, trying to absorb his words. So, what do we do? He sighed. We keep building the cafe success. Prove the investment was wise. Show them that integrity and empathy can still yield good returns. I've done it before with other ventures, and I can do it again. They stood there for a moment, the evening light casting long shadows to the front windows. Emily could feel the steady warmth of his presence, a stark contrast to James's cold insinuations. A soft knock at the locked door startled them both. Emily peeked outside and saw Anna, who had left her jacket behind. She unlocked the door. "Sorry, forgot this." Anna apologized, ducking in to grab the denim jacket from a hook. Spotting Daniel, she offered an awkward smile. "Hey, Mr. Harper." He returned the greeting politely. Anna's gaze flicked between them, sensing the tension. "Everything okay?" Emily forced a small smile. "Just fine. We'll close up in a minute." Once Anna left, Emily turned back to Daniel. "I won't let James intimidate me, but I also can't ignore the possibility that he'll cause us trouble." Daniel squeezed her shoulder gently. "I'll handle James. You focus on what matters, your mother, your cafe, and your own well-being. Don't let his words get under your skin." She mustered a nod, though a nod of worry refused to dissolve entirely. He was right that the best thing she could do was run her cafe successfully and care for her mother. But a faint whisper in her mind warned her this was only the beginning of a larger battle. They parted ways outside the cafe, each lost in thought. As Emily walked to her car in the fading twilight, she couldn't help but feel a chill wind at her back, an omen, perhaps, of the storms that might lie ahead. Over the next few weeks, a sense of mounting tension seeped into Emily's life. Carter's Nook enjoyed a small boost in customers after the reopening, and the repairs held steady. Still, an undercurrent of unease lingered, primarily because of James Whitmore's veiled threats and her mother's worsening condition. One morning, Emily awoke to find Margaret disoriented, wandering the apartment with her coat on backward. "Mom," she said, gently guiding her toward the kitchen table. "Where were you going?" Margaret's eyes darted around, blinking in confusion. "I was looking for the library. I need to get the math textbooks for my students." Her voice wavered, and for a second, Emily glimpsed the dedicated teacher Margaret once was. Emily felt a pang of sorrow. "We'll look for them together later," she reassured, coaxing her mother to sit. She prepared a glass of orange juice, heart aching. After making Margaret comfortable, she had only minutes to get herself ready before rushing to open the cafe. At Carter's Nook, she found Anna already busy frothing milk for a pair of cappuccinos. The aroma of fresh coffee mingled with the warm morning light streaming through the windows. A stack of newly printed flyers lay on the counter, showcasing the cafe's upcoming Spring Community Day, an event Emily hoped would further boost business and foster goodwill in the neighborhood. Anna handed Emily a latte order and a worried look. You all right? You seem rattled. Emily forced a faint smile. Just a rough morning at home. My mom's getting more confused. Sometimes it feels like she's slipping away faster than I can handle. Anna reached out and squeezed Emily's arm. I'm here if you need anything. The door chimed, revealing Daniel, dressed more casually than usual, carrying a small bouquet of daisies. He offered a nod to Anna before stepping up to the counter. Good morning, Emily, he greeted softly. These are for you, and for your mother. I remember you mentioning she liked daisies. Emily's cheeks warmed. You didn't have to do that. She inhaled the sweet scent of the flowers. Thank you. This means a lot. He glanced around the cafe, which was bustling with half a dozen customers. Place looks great, he said, giving a small nod of approval. I want to check on how you're handling the upgrades and also see how you're doing. She gestured to a table in the corner. Why don't you have a seat? I'll bring you some coffee. After delivering orders to other patrons, she joined him briefly. The hum of conversation formed a pleasant backdrop, punctuated by the hiss of the espresso machine. Daniel leaned in. Laura mentioned you were finalizing the budget for your community day event. Any challenges? Funding is always, Emily admitted, but I'm determined to make it work. We'll offer free samples, maybe have some local musicians. It's my way of giving back and drawing more foot traffic. He smiled. I'd be happy to help if you need supplies or want to advertise. We could create a simple marketing campaign through Harper Enterprises channels. Emily considered his offer. Her pride still balked at accepting too much help, but time was short and every boost mattered. I appreciate it, she said finally. Let me think on it. Before she could continue, she noticed James Whitmore stepping inside. He paused at the threshold, scanning the room with cool eyes. Emily's stomach tightened. Daniel followed her gaze, his expression darkening. James approached their table with a forced smile. Daniel, Miss Carter. Busy morning, I see, he remarked, nodding at the occupied tables. Emily stiffened. We're doing well, yes. Daniel's jaw tightened. James, is there something you need? James arched a brow. Just came to see how our investment is faring. Word on the board is that you're planning a community event. Generous. But let's hope it translates into profit. Heat rose to Emily's cheeks, but Daniel cut in. Emily's approach has already improved foot traffic. If you have concerns, bring them to me, not her. James shrugged as if unconcerned. Of course, I'll do just that. He pivoted on his heel and walked out, leaving a chill in his wake. Emily exhaled, tension knotting her shoulders. That man is relentless. Daniel placed a comforting hand over hers. Don't let him rattle you. He's testing your resolve and mine. He stood, preparing to leave. Keep me updated on the community day. Let's make sure it's a success. She watched him go, the daisies resting on the table between them. In that moment, she felt both bolstered by Daniel's support and worn down by James's presence. It was as though two tides pulled at her, one offering hope, the other bringing a creeping sense of dread. By midday, the cafe settled back into a steady rhythm. Emily put the bouquet in a mason jar behind the counter. Whenever she glimpsed the flowers, she allowed herself a flicker of optimism. Despite James's looming threats and Margaret's struggles, she was determined to move forward. For the remainder of the day, she pushed through orders, greeted customers with genuine warmth, and quietly planned the details for her community event. She had no illusions that the road ahead would be smooth. In fact, she sensed the biggest challenges were yet to come. But the cafe was alive again, and Margaret still recognized her face most days. As long as those two truths held, Emily believed she could hold her ground against the gathering clouds. The following morning, Emily arrived at Carter's Nook in a haze of exhaustion. She had spent much of the night calming Margaret, who was convinced strangers were lurking outside the apartment. A doctor's appointment loomed on the horizon, offering few answers and more reminders that Alzheimer's was a slow, relentless thief. Anna noticed the dark circles under Emily's eyes. Why don't you take a break? I can handle the counter for a bit. Emily gave a grateful nod. Just for a moment. Thanks. She retreated to the small storage room behind the kitchen, where she slumped onto a stool, her head in her hands. The air smelled faintly of cleaning supplies, coffee grounds, and pastries. She told herself to get it together. There was too much to do. A gentle knock startled her. "Emily," came Daniel's voice. She quickly straightened. He peeked in, concern evident in his eyes. "Anna said you were back here." "Oh," Emily managed, pushing aside her embarrassment. "I didn't expect you today." He stepped inside, careful not to crowd her in the cramped space. "I wanted to see how the community day preparations were going. Also, I hope to talk about your mother. Laura mentioned you might need specialized in-home care." Emily's shoulders sagged. "She's having more episodes of confusion, nightmares, even paranoia. The doctor warned me we might reach a point where she needs round-the-clock supervision." Daniel leaned against a shelf lined with paper cups. "If that time is here, I can recommend a great service. They specialize in dementia care." She hesitated, her voice wavering. "That would cost a fortune. I'm barely covering her current costs." He didn't flinch. "You have a partner now, remember? Let me help." His tone was gentle but resolute. Emily's throat tightened. Accepting help for the cafe felt logical, like a business arrangement. But letting him fund her mother's care felt deeply personal, almost too intimate. She stared at the floor, torn between pride and desperation. Sensing her struggle, he lowered his voice. "Emily, I'd do this for any friend in need. But after what you did, returning the suitcase, the letters, please understand this is just me trying to be there for you. No strings." When she finally met his gaze, she saw genuine compassion. Slowly, she exhaled, tears threatening. "Okay," she whispered, "but I insist on paying back whatever you spend." He gave a small smile. "You'll pay me back when the cafe is thriving, one step at a time." They left the storage room together. That afternoon, Daniel arranged for a reputable in-home care agency to send a nurse to evaluate Margaret's needs. Emily was both relieved and guilty. She detested that her mother's dignity required charity from a man she was only starting to know, but she also saw no other choice. A few days later, the nurse, Sarah Bennett, arrived at the apartment. She was in her 50s, with calm eyes and a comforting smile. Sarah did a thorough assessment, asking Emily about Margaret's routine triggers and emotional states. Margaret, initially suspicious, eventually warmed to Sarah's gentle manner. Emily hovered in the background, twisting her hands. Once Sarah finished, she turned to Emily. "Your mother's at a stage where consistent structure and gentle reassurance are crucial. I can provide daily assistance, help with meals, bathing, medication reminders. It will take patience, but will give her the best quality of life possible." "Thank you," Emily murmured, her voice thick. "I really appreciate it." They discussed scheduling and costs. Emily's chest tightened when she saw the figures, but she remembered Daniel's words. "You'll pay me back when the cafe is thriving." This arrangement was a lifeline, though it felt precarious. What if the cafe never makes enough? She wondered. But she pushed that fear aside, for Margaret's sake. Later that evening, Emily collapsed onto the couch, exhaustion pulling at her limbs. Margaret was asleep in her bedroom, Sarah having left a few hours earlier with a promise to return in the morning. The apartment was silent, except for the muffled hum of traffic outside. Emily's phone buzzed. A text from Daniel read, "How did it go with the nurse?" She typed back a quick update, followed by a sincere note of thanks. A moment later, his reply came, "Asterisk glad to help. Let me know if you need anything else." Asterisk, she stared at that message, a wave of conflicting emotions rising in her chest. Gratitude, vulnerability, a spark of something deeper she couldn't quite name. She set the phone aside, leaning her head against the back of the couch. The events of the last few days had forced her to accept help in ways she once resisted. Sitting alone in the quiet living room, she realized just how many silent sacrifices she'd been making, sacrificing her own well-being, sleep, and sense of security. For the first time in a long while, it felt like someone was truly sharing her burdens. She closed her eyes, letting the exhaustion wash over her. Outside, the city pulsed with life. Inside, she allowed herself a small moment of peace. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, like the upcoming community day event that was vital for the cafe's survival. But for tonight, She reminded herself she was not alone. Days turned into a frantic rush as Community Day approached. Flyers were distributed around the neighborhood. Social media posts promoted Carter's Nook, and Emily arranged for a local guitarist to provide live music. Daniel quietly funded a portion of the marketing costs, though he stayed in the background, letting Emily take the spotlight. Despite the flurry of activity, a heavy cloud weighed on her. Margaret's in-home care was better than nothing, but the nurse, Sarah, noticed frequent episodes of confusion and restlessness. One evening, Margaret grew agitated, accusing Emily of hiding her school papers. She paced the apartment for an hour, tears streaming down her face. It broke Emily's heart to see her mother like that. Still, the cafe demanded attention. One afternoon, while finalizing the event schedule, Emily heard raised voices near the entrance. She rushed out from behind the counter to find James Whitmore standing stiffly, speaking with Daniel in hushed but heated tones. "James," Emily said, keeping her voice neutral. "Is there a problem?" James turned to her, eyes cold. Just a difference of opinion regarding Mr. Harper's priorities. The board is concerned about another venture he's exploring that might stretch company resources. Seems he has a habit of dividing his attention. Daniel's jaw tightened. James is under the impression that supporting local businesses is a distraction, not an opportunity. Emily suppressed a flare of anger. Our community event is bringing positive attention. The foot traffic could eventually benefit your company. James cut her off. Not everyone sees it that way. Some might argue that Harper Enterprises has bigger fish to fry. Daniel forced a calm tone. "We'll resolve this at the next board meeting. Until then, James, I advise you to stop ambushing me in public venues." James fixed them both with a long, unreadable stare. "Be careful, Miss Carter. The line between personal and professional can be treacherous." With that, he left, the door slamming shut behind him. A tense silence lingered. Emily looked at Daniel. "Don't worry, my cafe keeps causing friction for you." He shook his head. "This isn't your fault. James has his own agenda. But I won't lie. He's rallying certain shareholders to question my decisions." Worry pulled in Emily's chest. "What happens if they force you to withdraw support?" Daniel inhaled slowly. "I'm not withdrawing anything. If it comes down to it, I'd rather fight them than back down. Let's not borrow trouble. Focus on making Community Day a success. Show everyone your cafe is worth investing in." Emily nodded, grateful for his steadfastness. But she couldn't shake the unease creeping up her spine. She'd never wanted to be a pawn in corporate struggles. That evening, after closing up, she visited Margaret at home. Sarah greeted her with a gentle smile, reporting that Margaret had been calmer that day. Relief flooded Emily, though she knew it was a temporary reprieve. In her bedroom later, Emily stared at the event flyers spread out on her small desk. She'd planned meticulously for the coming weekend. Live music, free samples, children's activities. The success of that day could mean everything for the cafe's reputation and bottom line. She fiddled with a pen, recalling how simple her life had seemed a year ago, even with a divorce looming. Now I'm dealing with corporate board politics, a wealthy partner, and a mother who barely remembers who I am. Her phone chimed. A text from Anna. "Asterisk, count me in for Community Day prep tomorrow morning. We can handle it, boss." Asterisk's enthusiasm in Anna's message bolstered Emily's spirits. She typed back, "Thanks. I appreciate you more than you know." Even so, a sense of being on the brink lingered. The brink of success or failure. The brink of trust or betrayal.